Hi everyone! In today's video I am going to make our no-knead bread. Now this is a super simple, super easy, super tasty bread, and it is no knead and it takes 2 days to make. So in the first day you mix up your dough, you'll let it sit overnight, and then anywhere from 18 to 30 hours later you'll loaf it up and then bake it. So for the first part of this video, I'm just going to do the mixing. So I have 9 cups of flour, and I'm going to add half a teaspoon of yeast, one rounded tablespoon of salt, and we use the Morton's kosher sea salt. And so that's a fairly coarse-grained salt. So kind of keep that in mind when you are adding your salt. Whether it's a finer grain, use a little less. If it's a larger grain, go ahead and use the same amount. Now, I like to take a whisk and just go through, give it a little mix so that it gets mixed through the bread, or through the dough, flour. And now I'm going to add 4.5 cups of water. I like to use warm water, not hot, just nice and warm. Add that in. And now I'm going to stir it up with this wooden spoon. And I don't use the spoon end of it, I use the handle end of it. And normally, because I'm short, I like to sit down and do this, but we'll see how it goes. It makes it pretty easy if you just sit down and put the tub, or if you're using a bowl, on your lap, and then give it a good stir. And you can use your hand if you want to, if you don't have a nice sturdy spoon. I just don't like getting it on my hands, because then you're trying to clean it off your hands. And we've been making this bread for, I was trying to figure that out, and I would say at least 5 years. And we have made pizza out of it, we've made cinnamon rolls, we've made focaccia bread. Right now we're going through a phase of doing the Dutch oven method. But very often we do loaves using a loaf tin. You can do a free form on a baking sheet. You could use it as like a seeded bread loaf. And you just want to mix it until all of the flour is incorporated in and you don't have any dry spots. And it's not a super dry dough, so it's pretty easy to get it all mixed together. And I use this tub because we have several of these tubs that are extra from the cheese room, and they have a nice lid that can go on. But if you don't have a tub like this that has a lid that goes with it, you can just use a bowl and cover it with saran wrap. Okay, so there we go. It is all mixed together. So, let me get that off. And pop the lid on. And I will just sit this on the counter and then come back to it tomorrow. And we've done anywhere from 18 hours up till probably 30, maybe a little more than 30, and it always turns out good. Each time it turns out a little bit different because the temperature of the house changes, the length of time it sits. That all varies, and But what we do know is that it always turns out really tasty, really good, and it's super simple, just like that. We'll have bread dough tomorrow. Okay, I'll check back with you tomorrow. Okay, welcome back to day 2. So it has been about 24 hours and the bread dough is ready. It looks like that. Smells nice and yeasty. And I have the oven on to proofing mode, so it's 100 degrees, and that's because our house is fairly cool. In the summer, we just let it rise on the counter, but during the winter, we use the proofing mode. And so now I am going to loaf it up, and today I'm going to be making 2 rounds, and the flour to use for this recipe can be all-purpose flour, or we use a high gluten flour from Shepherd's Grain, and they produce really nice flour, and we can buy it in 50-pound sacks from our local restaurant supply store. So that is the flour that we tend to use. Now, using a spatula, I'm just going to go around the edges and release it from the tub. Now this recipe we find produces 3 nice loaves of bread or 2 nice rounds using the Dutch ovens. Okay. So there we go. Put that to the side. Now I'll just bring this into a round. Cut that in half. Put half of it to the side. Form it into a round, and it's soft, so it's not going to make a perfect round. And then set that to the side. And tuck those little bottom bits in. And set that there. Now, what we do is we have parchment paper, and this is, if you're doing the Dutch oven method, you want to use parchment paper. If you're putting it into a loaf tin at this point, you can put it into your loaf tin or onto a baking sheet if you're going to do a free-form loaf. And generally, we recommend using parchment paper for that too, just to make sure stuff doesn't stick. And then you'll let it rise on that. Now, you want to take a little bit of flour. And using a sifter kind of makes it nice. Sprinkle that around. And then you just pop your round of dough into the center of it. And with this parchment paper, it's cut into a square, and then it has cuts cut in from each corner until right about the center of it. And that is because you want to be able to kind of fold it up around it. And then pull that, pull that, and then we let it rise in one of 2 things. We have this little bread proofing basket that a friend gave us that we use, and then we use just a regular bowl. And if you don't have a basket, just use 2 bowls. So, once again, into a round. that to the side. I'm gonna scrape up flour. A little bit of bread dough stuck to my hand. I'm gonna tuck under there. Next piece of parchment paper. I'm gonna just use this. Give it a dusting. Pop your round into the center. And then into the bowl. So now I have the 2 balls of bread that have been formed up, and I'm going to pop them into the oven. Which is on proofing mode and is at 100 degrees. So I'm going to do a little cleanup, and once those have risen they don't get quite twice the size, but they'll puff up quite nice. I'll leave them in there probably 30-45 minutes, come back, take them out, and then turn the oven on to 425 degrees. And when you turn the oven on to bake or to preheat, you put your Dutch ovens in there with their lids on to also preheat. So I'll show you that when I come back. Okay, so I'm back, and it's probably been an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. I think about an hour and a half since I put this into proof, because I went down to the cheese room and I got busy doing some stuff, lost track of time. Anyway, I am going to turn the oven on to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's gonna come on, and now I'm gonna pop our 2 cast iron Dutch ovens in. One is from Costco, one is a Lodge cast iron. Anyway, so in these go. And our bread has risen up beautifully. It's nice and jiggly. It looks gorgeous. So I'm gonna let that preheat. This will just sit here. And then once it's preheated, I'll open it up, pop the lid off. Using the parchment paper, I'll put one in each of the Dutch ovens, and then pop the lid back on. Bake for 20 minutes with the lid on, and then take the lid off after 20 minutes and bake it for another 10 to 20 minutes. Generally, we fall kind of in that 15 to 20 minute range. So I will be back. Okay, so the oven has come up to temperature now, 425 degrees Fahrenheit baking. And while that was happening, my mom came through and she cut a line down the center of the dough so that when it does continue to rise in the oven, it'll split in a nice pattern, or so it'll split where it's supposed to. That lid on, and then the same with this, and this is where that parchment paper comes in so handy. That goes into there. Okay, those are in the oven now, and I'm gonna set my timer for 20 minutes and come back and pop those lids off for another 10 to 20 minutes to finish letting them brown. Okay, so the bread has been in the oven now for 20 minutes with the lids on, and then for 27 minutes with the lid off. And now they look nice and done. So I'm gonna turn the oven off. Ooh. Over here. Oop. Okay. And there we go. 2 beautiful loaves of no-knead bread. So I am going to leave these to cool completely, and then I will cut into them. I'll probably cut into them tomorrow. It's fairly late at this point, and I'm ready to go to bed. But as you can see, the recipe is simple, easy, and it always turns out delicious. I hope you enjoy. And if you do try this recipe, please drop a comment down in the comments section and let me know how it turned out. Thank you.